this session was sort of an intro into web CTF challenges and sort of, I guess, the stuff that you would see. And I guess the thing that helped me the most was probably just watching other people and learning their methodology, I suppose, or maybe just sort of watching other people solve CTF challenges and sort of how they went about it. So that's sort of the plan. Now the team, president is Zesh, I'm the treasurer, Scott Morrison, and secretary is Lycerius. I'm not really sure how to pronounce that. As always. Yeah, sweet. Well, I don't know. It's one of those things where you've always read it, but you haven't heard it. All right, so I'm going to be talking today mainly about Jeopardy-style CTFs. They're the most common. When we're talking about CTFs most of the time with disk, it's usually Jeopardy-style. Jeopardy styles are the most common, and they're probably the best place to start for beginners because there's always different levels of challenges. They might be easy to hard, and so that's especially important because obviously for people who are beginners, you're not going to be able to solve the super hard challenges straight away. I mean, I often can't even solve the super hard challenges, so it's important to have the easier stuff to work your way up. The reason it's called Jeopardy is because challenges are grouped by category. And those being web, forensics, crypto, binary, and miscellaneous, which is all sorts of stuff, with points being associated to each challenge according to difficulty. That's pretty standard. Jeremy talked about this stuff a couple of weeks ago. The idea is to collect tokens as proof of having solved various tasks, and that kind of depends on the tasks as well. So it's like XSF, sometimes it might be like sending a cookie, whereas if it's like RT, it might just be like catting out a file or something like that. And players tend to focus in areas that they're interested in. So like personally, I'm interested in web. And so when CTF challenges are on, I end up focusing on web because it's the area that I'm interested in. And that's important too. Like if you find something interesting, then always go towards that. You know, it's always better to find a specialty in my opinion. So we're going to be talking today about web. I think I don't know. I wouldn't say necessarily it's the lowest barrier of entry, but I think it's probably the most common thing you see out in the real world as a pen tester. There's probably like a lot more web stuff than it is the majority of other stuff. But I don't know. That's probably you could probably debate me on that. But regardless, web challenges are really great to learn common vulnerabilities because the challenges are grouped the challenge is usually right around a specific vulnerability. And so in solving it and having to break down just that vulnerability, you end up actually learning a lot more about it. And often too, because you're really only focusing on one small part. Like if you do a hack the box, one component might be web, and then you end up with a shell, and then you end up privesking, and then you end up as root or whatever. So there's multiple components there. Whereas if you're doing a CTF challenge and it's specifically on one specific vulnerability, I find you learn a lot more about it. And then also, CTFs will often have a couple of web challenges that rely on the same vulnerability. But then we'll sort of increase in difficulty. And that's really useful as well, because sometimes you might have like an XSS challenge where like the first one's really simple, but then the next one adds a filter. And in doing so, you learn things like WAF bypasses and all sorts of stuff like that. So it kind of, I personally like them because they sort of hold your hand into learning in some regards. They also can be really frustrating, but that's yeah. And so there are a few common vulnerabilities that we expect to find. There's probably a million more, to be honest, but these are just sort of common, I suppose. Cross-site scripting, SQL injection, command injection, cross-site request forgery, directory traversal, server-side request forgery, which is kind of the same as command injection most of the time, and client-side stuff, which is all sorts of stuff like decoding cookies or all sorts of stuff, which is actually what we'll talk about first. The client side, it's kind of these are usually the stuff you'll find in the much simpler challenges, especially some of the stuff that I'll show you today. They're usually very simple. They require usually obtaining some type of sensitive data or something available to the client. It could be a script or a session token or like a password inside like a script, something like that. These challenges are intended to show you why it's important to properly secure data. They're also kind of I think they're also just sort of good warm up / intro things, because it's just like, useful for the, going through methodology of like what to check when you end up with a web app. All right, so we'll start with trusted client. So I've gotten reversing wrong web. So I've gotten these from a bunch of different sources. 24/7 CTFs is pretty good. Here, I've actually got to log in. Sorry guys, one sec. Oh, actually, hang on. Let's just see. Does this login work? Look at that, random old login. Cool. All right, so turn this on the other computer. Cool. So, so 24/7 CTF, for example, is available 24/7, and so you can see here there's a bunch of other different categories as well. I'm going to be focusing on web. It doesn't have, for example, like it doesn't have any XSS stuff in it, but it does have some really interesting, like it's got a template injection one. It's got a few stuff that's really useful. Okay, so here we start challenge, and this will give us a link. And so for a lot of these beginner ones, you'll find that the app is really simple. So if we view page source here, come on, we can see it's actually really, really simple. Like there's not much here. It's literally just a form. And then we can see here that we're not even, the script is actually embedded directly. There's this random script actually embedded directly inside index, and normally you go, okay, cool, want some random scripts, doesn't really matter. But this one obviously looks interesting because it's massively long encoded payload. And if we go back, sometimes another thing to note, a lot of times the description of challenges will give you a hint too. And the more CTFs you do, the more times you can actually figure out the vulnerability or what the challenge is about based off of the sort of hints that are given to you. So for example here, developers don't always have time to set up a backend service when prototyping code. Storing credentials on the client side should be fine as long as it isn't obfuscated. So if we're talking about client side stuff, we can go here and we can actually look, like let's see what happens and try to log in. Okay, so that's interesting. So see, we're getting a JavaScript alert here, and that's sort of a telltale sign that the auth is happening on the client side. So what that means is that there's some sort of JavaScript which is checking to see the username and password. And because that's happening, it usually means that the username and password is stored in clear text somewhere. And so we can kind of deduce that clearly we found some sort of weird encrypted JavaScript looking thing. So we can assume that most likely inside of here is probably the credentials or whatever we're looking for. Now, I actually know what this is already because I have experience. I've done a couple of CTF challenges before that require this, but this is what's called JS fuck. So it's some sort of weird, I don't know, someone figured this out where you could kind of write any JavaScript with 6 characters. And so if you go to this page, you can see clearly this is obviously what we're working with. And so it's kind of interesting too, because you can encode all sorts of stuff. So alert, hey, for example, and you can encode it into some massively long payload using 4 characters or whatever. So that's good. We know what the encoding is. So now that we know that, we could say JS fuck decode. And let's see. Yeah, here we go. Oh no, that's see if we can go up. That's a script we could download, which is fine. But let's see if there's one online. Cannot remember where we. No, that's base64 crap. Yeah, fuck. This is just so this is just a random GitHub. So that would be useful. I often, when I'm doing web challenges, and sometimes it actually does take me longer, I try to do everything just from online tools. I don't know. It's often just simpler because you can just stay in the browser. I mean, yeah, you might use Burp or something, but it's easier to stay. Like it's easier. I personally find it easier to stay in the browser. JS fuck decode. Yeah, what? Okay, let's go back here. Right. All right. Well, I think we're just going to try this script then, because we obviously can't find it. I've got no idea. I remember it was like decode or something, but that doesn't matter. Holy, whoops, that's not the wrong link. Right. Let's see what we got here. Cool. So we got a GitHub repo. We'll copy that. Open a new terminal. All right. cd temp. Last temp get clone. Not bad boy. cd js djs fuck. All right. So what does it say here? Executes JS into readable JavaScript. So yeah, we just need to copy our JS fuck code, or our crap, whatever you want to call it. JS fuck sounds funny to say, especially on a call. All right. So we'll just go nano. We'll just say JS fuck. Well, yeah, it's a long file. It's got to paste it in there, doesn't it? Okay, exit. Okay, that's falling down my computer. Come on. Hopefully that doesn't freeze.
Not a good sign.
What's that?
It's not a good sign if Nano's freezing up.
No, it's annoying. It was free. It froze my browser before as well. That's okay. Deobfuscate. JS fuck. It's just because it's a really. It's just because it's just. Yeah. Well, it's kind of shit too. It's only a i5. But yeah, it can't handle JS. Clearly. All right. Let's. Oh yeah, did you find one? Yeah, I did it before on my other computer, so all of my saved. Where is the? Yeah, that's probably. Yeah, that's probably what we're looking for. Yeah, that's it. Thanks, guys. Yeah, see, crowdsourced CPS solving here. Yeah, cool. So we'll copy this thing again. Sorry about the pain in the ass here. Let's get rid of these tabs. All right, so I know for now, just to get rid of the val, because most of these things, oh, fuck, come on. Am I actually clicking the link, or am I just clicking the GitHub link? Lol. Yeah, I think that did it. Inspect. I don't know why my tools aren't coming up. Yeah, because from memory, it would actually, yeah, see, here we actually get an error. Because for some reason, whatever's in the code, all of these things, they try to evaluate it. But I found, and it was just kind of by happenstance, that you could actually click here, and it decoded it here. So clearly, this thing was decoding it. Browser was trying to run it, but then somewhere it was running into an error. So cool, here we go. We managed to find the flag is 24/7 CTF, whatever. And so that's the first challenge. So this is a good example of this person's tried to use JS fuck or whatever as a way of obfuscating the fact that, or a way of hiding the credentials that they're using to do client-side authentication. And at the end of the day, you can always find a decoder. If you're not me, if you're someone else, you can find a decoder. And so here, the flag is in here. And so you would just submit this flag and it would give you the thing. But I'm not going to focus too much on that because obviously that's pointless for our demonstration. All right, so let me just, I'm real bad with tabs. Okay, so that was the first session. That was pretty simple. Just a sort of really simple script client side. So this is the next one. This is actually the next challenge in, this is actually the next challenge here. So this is secured session. So I mean, even the name of this gives us an indication of well, secured session. We're going to assume it probably has something to do with session tokens, especially because it is also a lower point challenge as well. So they're usually simpler. If you can guess a random secret key, we will tell you the flag. We will tell you the flag securely stored in your session. So we'll start challenge here. I'm just going to close this. Try not to close Discord. Like an idiot. All right, cool. So we come to looks like a really basic Flask app. I'll just zoom this in a little bit, so maybe it's a little easier for you guys. Yeah, so we come to what looks like a really basic Flask app. So we can see defined in routes. There's only one route, which is flag. And so what they're talking about is the secret key. So every time this thing is run, random 24 characters are generated to generate a secret key. Okay, let's see, secret key to int. So this just converts your secret key to an integer unless there's a value error and it turns it to 0. Okay, yeah, so see here, this is interesting. So we can see here, this is defining the session. This is defining the session. So this means that when it sends a response back, it will actually define the session value as what's actually here as flagged. And we can see it doesn't look like. That's interesting. Let's have a look. So if we go flash flag, incorrect secret key, but let's. I want you. Let me look at. I want you to do that command. No, it's because this thing is screen sharing things in the way. All right, so let's have a look here, and let's just look at our cookies. Let's see if it gave us something. Oh, yeah, see, so it's given us a session token. So we could see from the code that it was going to give us a. Yeah, so it's gonna give us something called session. Well, in our session, so it's going to be called session because it's using the session library. Sorry, it doesn't matter. Okay, so let's look here. This looks like base 64 encoded, I reckon, which makes sense because base 64 decode. Find something quick. And this size is ugly. All right, decode. Oh yeah, cool. So we can see here. We've got some JSON, which is how Python normally encodes session code, how the Flask session library encodes session cookies anyway. It looks like this flag value here is probably base 64 encoded again. So I reckon we could just like decode that again. Oh yeah, perfect. See, and there we have the flag. So that one was even easier because like I didn't have to screw around looking for some stupid JS fuck stuff, and also you didn't even need to know about JS fuck. So yeah, so that's another good example of like typically. When you run Flask sessions, you actually have a proper secret key here, and you actually properly encrypt the session value. But it wasn't going through any of that; it was just assigning the flag straight to the session value without actually doing any of the proper session encrypting. Because normally it would actually encrypt that value so that you can't decrypt it unless you had that secret key. So you wouldn't ever be able to find any of these values. You wouldn't actually be able to find the flag value. But because and that's actually kind of hinted too, because it's secured session, because it's hinted at it actually being an unsecured session. So yeah, those are two examples of client side stuff. So that's stuff that that you as the client would have access to. Okay, so the next example would be command injection. Command injection is a vulnerability that allows an attacker to submit system commands to a computer running an application, use a result of a poorly implemented system call, which uses unsanitized user input. So, I mean, it could be a million things, to be honest. But most of the time, it's in the form of SSRF, so it's like server-side request forgery. So it's usually like there's a request made to a website, and it's running a shell command, and you usually append shell commands after that command. That's usually how there's a million ways that command injection could come about. I mean, it could be it could be like a call to a vel in a PHP app or something like that. But usually when you're looking at basics, like simple CTF challenges, that's what you end up with. So here's a good example of a SSRF command injection, and this is very basic. So these are like good examples. Probably won't find it that often in the real world, but if you do, then it's more power to you. I've got to log in again. Sorry guys, hang on. Oh yeah, there we go. I've actually got login details. Nice. Sorry. Cool. That was smooth. All right. So start challenge. All right. So what have we got here? We've just got like this little thing. We've just got ping. Looks like a ping or something. Let's just submit query. Huh. I did. Hang on. Let's reload this. Yeah, I already did log in. That's weird. Hang on. That's super weird. It's like I logged in and then got logged out straight away. The demo gods, hey? Alright, try this again. What the fuck? What's wrong with you? Yeah, Scott Morrison's here. All right, well, if this one doesn't work, then that's okay. We move on. I've got more challenges to show. Hey, all right, come on, demo guys. All right, this is looking more normal. I don't know, some cross-site request forgery, protection stuff. Okay, cool. Yeah, so we can see here that the query that we submit, or the IP address that we submit, it looks like it pings it, probably like a ping C3 or whatever. So it's sends 3. So if we know Bash, or if we know Bash, we know that there's a number of ways to append command. The simplest is just by a semicolon. And so so if we're thinking about just writing something out in our terminal, we put semicolon and then write a new command. So let's try ls, for example. Let's see if we can get something back. Okay, perfect. So we can see here down at the bottom, we get index.php. And so we can assume that there's probably only one file in this directory, which is index.php. Now, if we look back at the challenge description, it says vulnerability within the service and exploited. So cool, we did that. The flag is in the index.php file. Okay, well, that should be easy enough. So we should just do cat index.php. Index.php. Should be easy enough, hopefully. No, it doesn't work. Okay, what if maybe the file's too large for it to come back? What if we try to we know the flag's in there. What if we grep flag? I can't actually remember what the secret was here. Oh yeah, haha, there we go. Yeah, so maybe the file was too big for it to actually echo back into this page here, but if we grepped it, then we're able to see here there's a flag was secret service plan, super secure, or whatever, and then that would just go in the password, and you'd validate it, and you could validate it. Okay, cool. So that every time you if you ever look up something like SSRF, or at least like a really basic example, it's always that. It's always something really simple. Most likely, you probably won't find that, and I don't even know how often you'd find that in a CTF, but it's a good example of like a command injection stuff. It's also okay. We'll get rid of that. Yeah. So the next thing to look at would be SQL injection. So SQL injection occurs when user input is passed directly to a SQL query without first being sanitized, and that's the most important aspect is the not being sanitized bit. It allows an attacker to craft a special query which can be inserted into the main query to either return true or return data from the DB. And that's because sometimes you might be exploiting a login page where you just want to return true. Which will then grant you login access or whatever. Or the other one, or the other way of going about it is if you actually have access to the output of the data, then you can actually query the database completely. You can do it. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Challenges are not as common as they used to be, but still very important to know. You don't find as many SQL injection challenges these days as you would like XSS and stuff like that. But I still think it's like super important. And so here's just a basic example of like what you'd I think this is Python. It looks like Python. This is just a basic example of how you would end up inputting into a query. So username and password are both coming in from post parameters. Whoopsie. And then those are just inputted directly into this query. And there are a number of different libraries and stuff for things like Python and like Node and all that sort of stuff that do like sanitization for you. But these are just directly put in, and you'll often sometimes know if you find like say a Python app or a Node app, and you notice that there's multiple SQL queries, and in some of them they're using different in some of them they're not using like a string replace, and then in others they're using something like a question mark. Then you'll often know, well, if they're different, then look for the one that's different because it's usually the vulnerable query. Because it might be like, oh, it might be vulnerable on the register instead of like the login or something, and that's kind of more common in my opinion. So this example is really simple. It highlights mechanics. So the data from this is taken and inserted straight into the query. Blah blah blah. So if this was like a login page, all we need is a username, and as a password, we could just put this simple query. What is it? Single quote space or 1 = 1 -- and basically that's just saying or true. So it's saying, regardless of whatever, return true. And so the query would end up returning true, and the query would return true and return the user. And so if the data was being returned to the user, we could use a tool like SQL Map to dump the contents of the DB. All right, cool. So these challenges are very simple, but yeah, I don't know. I didn't want to get too into the weeds of the. God, I'm here again. Everyone should email me on this address. I wonder what my password is.
Up to a few sites, Scomo.
Do it. Yeah, well, this is my burner email account, so that's why all these ones are signed up to it with this. Yeah. I don't actually know what my password is.
Whatever you
nope.
do, man.
Oh, actually, no, I do. Yeah, I signed up with another email address. That's right. So I got this other one. Sam Alexander is the greatest at gmail.com. I have lots of random ones. Oh, dude, come on. I cut my finger the other day, so I've got a Alex. I've got a bit of a fucked up finger, so my typing's pretty shit. Sorry, everyone. Oh my fucking god. All right. Well, why don't I'll move on to. Yeah, I'll move on to the other two, and then I'll log into this afterwards if anyone's actually interested. These two challenges I can put up, and I can also put up for anyone as well, because these are very, very basic SQL challenges. I don't know. Some people find SQL injection more interesting than others, or maybe some people are better at it than others. I don't know. I like it and stuff, but it's I don't know. I prefer things like XSS. But regardless, okay. So cross-site scripting. I don't know. This was just the first random page that I found. What is this? Attacker sends script injected link to victim. Victim clicks on link and requests legitimate website. Victim's browser loads legitimate site, but also executes script. Yeah, random. I've never seen this before. Okay, cool. So cross-site scripting occurs when user input is displayed as HTML without sanitization. It doesn't actually need to be necessarily displayed as HTML, but it's just displayed on the page in HTML. This can be stored or reflected. So that means so stored is when, to say you're making a forum post, that would be stored XSS. So you're actually the actual XSS payload is actually going to be saved on the page, and every time you reload it, it will be re-executed. Whereas reflected, it's it might be in a URL or something. For example, if you had say you had a redirect or something in a URL. An attacker can craft a payload which contains valid HTML calls to JavaScript, and that's done in a number of ways. Sometimes it's attribute injection. Other times it's actually just calling straight script tags. When the page is rendered, so is the payload, which then executes JavaScript in the context of the person viewing the page. And then challenges often consist of beating a sanitization filter. And especially when the thing I was saying before of having multiple challenges that kind of raise up in difficulty. If you look around on some of the sort of TTFs that are continuously going, say the 24/7 TTF and other ones, you'll find that there'll be a couple of XSS challenges that kind of increase in difficulty. And it's usually just increasing in the amount of sanitization that they actually do on the filter. Let's look at the following. Yeah, so the following two screenshots. Here's a really basic example. In this app, if you go localhost 8080/Mike, it'll actually print hello / whatever you're putting after the slash. And so here's a really basic example where after Mike, you can just put script tags in. So here we script alert malicious code script. And so what that'll do is that will just render, and so you can see that it hasn't actually rendered. But in the back end, and if you viewed source, you'd see that it's actually rendered the script tags. And so when that page loads, it will actually render this. It will actually render this malicious code. What is it called? Alert box thing. So we could so URL blah blah blah. So this is basically what I just said. So you'll end up popping alert box. So that's and this is the most basic. That would be the Flask app equivalent. Okay, so I've got some challenges here, and they're part of this. I don't know. I'm sure Jeremy and stuff have probably seen this, but it's it's a game that was made, I believe, by Microsoft. I think it's a Microsoft thing. Fucking Google. Sorry, Google thing. But it's meant to teach you about XSS. And so you're inside your browser. You have your own little mini browser. So as you can see, I've just zoomed it in to make it easier. And there are hints and stuff here. And then I'm only going to go through the first 3 levels or whatever, because it'd be good for you to try yourself if you're actually interested, because this is actually really useful. We saw back at this slide here, this really basic payload. script, alert, malicious code. That is your most basic XSS payload, and you'll see it everywhere. In terms of like as a joke, you often see it in like people's, in the like descriptions and stuff on chats and stuff as like a joke, and maybe you can pop XSS as well.
Yeah, I use it for my descriptions.
Oh, did you? Yeah, okay, is it you? Yeah, there you go. I was like, I've definitely seen someone with script alert. Oh yeah, see, there we go. So I mean, obviously I've done this a few times, but that's the most basic payload. So this is an example of reflected here. I should actually show you the app first. So if we query hey, and we press search, no results were found for hey. And so when you come to an application and you go, oh, is this going to be XSS? The first clue that you'll have is that you're actually printing data to the page. And then we can actually inspect this. And if you actually, so say you inspect the element, I can't actually zoom this source in, but you can see that it's actually in bold tags. The query hey. So it's actually putting it inside bold tags. And because we're printing it straight to the screen, that's usually the first sign that it's going to be XSS. Because that's kind of that's like the first requirement, or yeah. And so knowing that, we can put our script tags in, execute it, and then it executes an alert. So alert 1 is the most basic payload. It's what most people do because it's just it just gives you this, congratulations to execute alert. And you can see here, it actually doesn't render it. And that's just because it's actually rendered in, that's because it's actually rendered in the HTML inspect element here. So yeah, actually rendered in the source, and that's a common thing. That's like if you're wondering why your thing isn't actually executing, so you can see here the script isn't there, but because script tags aren't going to show up. So if you're wondering why your thing isn't executing, it's always important to go back and keep looking at it and see, because you can keep adding to your payload to tweak it to actually make it valid HTML. All right, so we got the next. Oh, I think someone's already done this. That's hilarious. Okay, so here is the next. So that last example was an example of reflected XSS. So it was reflected through a URL parameter and then onto a page. This is the other type, which is stored. There are other types of XSS, but these are just the two basic. This is stored XSS. So instead of it being reflected via URL, this is actually just stored on the page. And so this is actually an example of like a chatter from across the web. So it's just some sort of a basic blogging chat platform thing. So we can put our script tags in again. So let's try another payload. Yeah, another payload that's probably good to like learn. X on error equals alert. So you can execute JavaScript from these on error tags, from these on error attributes. The main thing is that you have to actually cause an error. So the most common payload that you'll see like this will have like a script equals X, because it's like you don't actually want it to source equal text, because you don't actually want it to actually call out anywhere, and then it will trigger the on error, which means it will trigger the alert. Let's see. So we've got two alerts now. So because we had one before, because I don't know how you refresh this. I don't know how you refresh the DB under here. Oh, here we go. Clear all posts. Let's do that. Then we can have our own again. IMG. So C equals X on error equals alert this. And then close it. Cool. We executed disk. So yeah, so those are very simple. I mean, often if you find a CTF challenge that actually has just implementing straight script tags, then it's probably going to be like a warm-up challenge or whatever. But still useful to know. Okay, so we can actually let's actually look at the description here. As you've seen in the previous level, some common JS functions are execution sinks, which means that they will cause the browser to execute any scripts that appear in the input. Sometimes this fact is hidden by the higher-level APIs, which use these functions under the hood. So, as before, inject the script to pop the JavaScript. So, we actually look here, we can see image. So each time we click on one of these images, the frame number changes. Frame number 1, 2, 3, 4 in here. So 4 will just show us will just show us an image tag, which is interesting. But what if we inspect that? Okay, frame number 4. What if, yeah, so it's showing cloud 4. What if we go fuzz? Oh, here we go. Okay. So you can see here that this is actually, this input behind the hash or the pound is actually putting in, is actually a index or whatever, or is actually just a number that's appended to the end of this file name here. So you have /static /level3/cloud, and then whatever the number is, it will actually bring up the image for that source. So that makes sense. So then it's obviously got, yeah, so there's obviously a file called cloud1, cloud2, cloud3, but no cloud4. But that's interesting because we can see in here that we've now been input into attribute. So we can potentially control this SRC attribute, or potentially we could escape the SRC attribute and then actually put in one of those on error calls like I did in the last example. So let's start playing around. So a good way of playing with this, can I close that? Yeah. A good way of playing with this is actually like leaving it open and then continuously refreshing the page. Whoops. Get out of inspect. Continuously refreshing the page with your inspect open, because then it just means that you can keep adding to the payload. So at the moment, okay, so we're stuck inside cloud1.jpg. So what if we put a double quote there? Okay, so we're still there. What if we on error equals alert? Yes. So what does it give us then? So it's still kind of considering this all as one. Let me just change these. See, you can see how it's all underlined. That means it's still kind of considering it one attribute. I'm guessing that might be because see, I changed as soon as I changed the from a double quote to a single quote here, it actually closed this off. So now you can see it's SSC equals static1 level3/cloud1, and we actually know that should actually trigger the on error because there's no file extension there. So now we just have to kind of escape out of this little thing, not escape, but we have to kind of finish our on error thing here. So we have on error alert equals disk. That's all fine and dandy. So I think we just need to get rid of this JPEG. Maybe what if we close off that with another? Hey, look at that! Nice. I couldn't remember the payload, but that's good to figure out. So this is a good example of like how you'd figure out an XSS payload. How you'd actually figure it out, because you can see. So yeah, so it's a good example of I think it's called, I don't know if it's attribute injection or attribute escape. I'm not sure, but because we are able to control the value inside of an attribute, we can still end up executing JavaScript. All that's required is just a little bit of funkery to figure out how to actually escape like the initial string, and then how to add the stuff that we wanted. And they made it easy for us because we're already inside image tags, and you'll learn that most of the time when the image tags will always have this on error sort of function, and so it's common for XSS payloads. Right. So yeah, so that's everything I've got for cross-site scripting, and I could probably go back. I just have to change my password if anyone's interested, and do these simple SQL ones. I'm just gonna like send it. Do it on this other computer here. I'll do it over here. No. Open. Huh. Every device has different internet speed. It's funny.
I have like one device connected to 2.4.
Yeah, I think it's just because it's my phone. Okay, cool. All right, now I can log in. We'll go back to Scomo. 23. Everyone log in. Everyone phone me.
Okay, I will.
Okay, my password is I love Barbie 91. Oh, see, it doesn't even work. Dude, I didn't remember Ringer being such a ringer. Putting me through the ringer. Oh, see, that's a tricky one. Fucking weird. Weird. Log in. Yeah, I figured because if you stack too many demos on top of one another, you'll never win. Yeah, it doesn't even work. What the fuck? I just reset it and then and then it didn't work. All right, let's try again. Sorry, guys. It's reductive at this point. Another email address. Come on.
Can't believe you're trying to hack the login page.
Dude, no. God damn it, this is fucking annoying. Alright, hang on here. It's just because I made it on a Linux box. And then I have to present on my Mac.
I get that.
Yeah, and plus the AirPods. Dude, they give me a temporary password and it doesn't work. All right, we got one more option here. Let's just make another. Dude, what the fuck? How did that work? Wow. Huh. Fucking Ringer 0. Well, if anyone chooses to use it, hopefully you don't have as much trouble as I do. Yeah, no, login pages have slowed right down too.
What a frustrating website.
Dude, yeah. It's come on. Come on. Wow. Okay, no, I can't log in. It just does not let you do it. I think it needs to be brute force.
Leave it
I think it needs to be brute force.
as a task.
What was root me? Root me? Doesn't quite work in the. Yeah, let's see if maybe there's a simple SQL one here. SQL injection, authentication. Oh, shit, I'm kind of shit at that. No problem. this? Yeah, authentication v101. So usually with SQL injection, you start by putting in quotes. You want to try to break the SQL in syntax and get an error. Yeah, you watch. I'm not going to be able to figure this out.
I feel like
it'll be deceptively hard. That's what I mean. They always are. That's why the two that I had were really simple. But that's because it was like I started doing harder ones, and it was just like even just like being like, oh, this will be simple, but then they got deceptively harder and harder and harder and harder, and I was like, oh my god, this is actually taking a really long time.
Man, like 9 times out of 10, what I do is just like grab once you know there's a SQL injection there, grab that payload to SQL map.
Yeah. Just copy the response out and then shove it in an SQL map.
It's like it makes it so much easier. Like you don't have to.
No, it does. Yeah.
10 minutes building it.
Well, let's at least go through it. So I'm just gonna add a pattern to Foxy Proxy so that
list has been leaked.
What's that?
List.
My list, yeah. These are all CTS stuff, so it's nothing. Like it's not it wouldn't be like a sensitive like work stuff would be. All right, so that should be sweet. Let's just reload that. See if you turn it on. All right, that's broken. We can come over here. You can see we've intercepted it. I'm going to go to HTTP history. So cool. So we can see we have a post request. I don't know if I can actually zoom this in. No, fuck, that just destroys it. Yeah, so we can see we have a post request, login, password, test. You should just edit these and make sure they're actual values because SQL map doesn't want you to put like malforms. They want like an actual query in there so then they can actually, yeah. And then we can save this to a file. Oh, is it saved in my Mac? So make a file, request.txt, SQL map. Is it there? And I feel like it does exist. I didn't think about that. Not much here. I never use this thing for like web stuff. I guess SQL map is technically web stuff, isn't it? Who's on here? All right, yeah, I don't think it's. Yeah, fuck, I should have done that. All right, I might actually just download it and then run it, but I think it'll probably take too long. But regardless, yeah, that's that.
Yeah, I've only used SQL map when it's pre-installed.
Yeah. I mean, this is on my Mac, and so if I was gonna do that, I would just end up using it on like a Linux, on a VM or on my actual Linux box.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, it becomes a pain in the ass. Yeah, but this is nice though for just like doing some web stuff because you just have burp and a browser, and you're pretty much sorted. Yeah.
Is there any way to get around the trial version of burp?
Yeah, it's just community. But I mean, I don't know. If I'm not at work, it's useful to have the actual intruder and stuff. But for just this sort of shit, I don't think you really need it.
I mean,
too powerful.
There's individuals known out there that may happen to source a version by a man named Larry Lau. It's quite an older version, as it did get leaked.
True.
It does give you the professional features. I'm not saying
that's cool.
I'm not advocating for it, but
No.
people have been known to use that.
Well, I honestly get why they do it though, because having just recently actually used the professional one, it's like it's actually fucking awesome. Like it's so good. And you would just have script queues galore with their point and clicky, sending intruder payloads and shit left, right, and center.
Yeah, I had to use a bunch of that for one of my old projects, where it was like, oh, you need to get the actual version of this. And it's like, I'm gonna have to sign up with my actual email. Apparently, it's like, great, cool. Now I'm gonna get full spam from there. But it worked. Yeah, Intruder was good.
Yeah.
Intruder.
Yeah. It's very fast. Yeah. It makes a difference from a professional standpoint because it's like, well, time is money.
Yeah.
But,
and then also like some of the professional sort of extensions that you can get.
Yeah, true.
Some of them are really like turbo intruders, just because you can completely customize your intruder payload.
Oh, that's dope.
How
turbo intruder.
It's really good for testing like race conditions. To say like.
Oh yeah, true. You would do it real fast, wouldn't it?
If you can like fill up as many kind of sockets to say a MySQL server as you can, the other sockets will have to wait for the much extent same. You might be able to double transfer yourself $1,000 from your bank, or you might be able to reset not only your password but someone else's password at the same time, or I don't know.
Yeah.
Weird things happen.
Yeah, no shit. That's sick. Maybe SQL. Oh Lord, that makes a lot of noise. If it runs. It does, look at that. Attack R/temp, what was it? Request. And what was it? Is it attack P and then username password? I'm guessing. Trying to get better at using SQL map from command line. I was like kind of stuck in using it in burp for a while, and then I realized, this is actually really fucking stupid.
Yeah, I don't remember what command I used, but I think I used the wizard.
Like, it's got like a
do it for me.
SQL. Yeah, it's got like an SQL map. Or at least in burp, it's got like SQL Pi or some shit. I don't know. It's just a pain in the ass, and it's like you just download the request, put it in a file, tac R, and then just tac P, and then whatever the parameters are that you want to actually test.
That's actually wild. I never knew that burp had like a secret.
Yeah, if you go to extensions, it's like SQL Pi. It ends up just adding a bunch of it ends up running a massive command, and it's dumb too because you have to keep like refreshing the output. It's just dumb. It's like there's some good things that burp is good for, but like not that. Yeah. And then also I was looking at reports, and the way they showed how to do it was like download the request and then use SQL map. And it was because it was like, well, when people are reading reports, it was a lot easier for them to reproduce. And I was like, that makes sense. Like that's good way of going about it. Yeah. Such as life. It says it's doing something. You want to include all tests? You can say yeah. I'm able to connect to the target URL. That's working. Yeah, no problem. I guess SQL map sometimes can take a long time. Nah, thread. IP or something. I'm in the wrong directory too.
-T for threads, and you can have a maximum of 10.
Oh, okay, sick.
That's only really useful when you.
Yeah. Have I gone in long enough that I should quit and then restart it with threads on? I'll do it. The YOLO.
Just open another instance of it. That'll work.
Yeah. Well. We've already made the. Yes, I want to skip tests for other VBs. We include all tests for SQL. Blah blah blah. I'll just say yes. I'm not actually sure. I don't feel like reading it. How was everyone's day?
Phenomenal.
I had to rush to get that career employability tools unit complete. It's like, oh right, that closes at 8 p.m. It's like,
Is that LinkedIn class? Yeah, that's LinkedIn class. Yeah.
It's something like that, pretty much. It's like,
yeah, make a LinkedIn profile. Yeah,
like,
LinkedIn class. Yeah, this is LinkedIn.
It's like, yep.
Fuck. Is that year one stuff?
Yeah. It's so slow.
I despise doing that so much.
Yeah, the moment you get a job, all those tools just go out the window. It's like, who cares what you do in 5 years now? You're in.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's still good to have. Like, until you get to that point, it's still good to have. So I understand the importance of it, but
yeah, it's just so slow.
Yeah.
It's just frustrating because I already had a resume and then they made me write it in their style, which was really crap. It was real ugly and crappy, and they wouldn't let me just hand in the resume I'd already written.
Oh yeah.
I was like, piss off! Like I'm just, yeah.
They have a site to compare it now, and the template I used kind of freaked it out. It's like, you didn't put anything in your resume. It's like, oh, I'm pretty sure I did.
Yeah, no, same shit that happened with me.
Yeah, that's just, it's fucking stupid.
Yeah, I need
and then I remember I ended up fixing I ended up getting help fixing up my resume from a recruiter guy. And then he was just cut all the shit out. It all sucks, you know. I'm like, yeah, exactly. It does suck, doesn't it? Yeah. Should be short and sharp.
Yeah. I wanted to fucking shoot myself while doing the resume task, because it's just like, yeah, do it in this specific order. Okay, yours is not in this specific order. Here, let us autofill it for you, and then we'll remark it. And then I'm like, okay, sure, do it for me. And then they're just like, nah, it's wrong shit. So I wasted a use for them to just correct it and tell me it's wrong.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, it sounds right. It's about right.
I got really mad with it because I had to burn like 3 or 4 uses just because I was going, oh hey, you have used this word far too many times. It's like, I've used it 3 times.
Yep. Too many. Don't use the word the.
Too many.
That's a filler word.
Yeah, I've seen that one. The. What is it like? Is of one of them?
I think so.
Yeah.
Because
it's pretty picky, but if you're really fine tuning it up, it's gonna pick those things up. But I applied some of the changes it recommended, and I got a lower grade. I'm like, you deserve to do this.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Like, great.
One of the things that I wrote to just like get the presentation up there, it was so bullshit. It was just like because I've worked at Macca's, and then like as one of the key points that I wrote, I'm just like ability to keep up with the pressure of the oncoming onslaught of orders from customers, and then it's like, yep, good job.
Fantastic.
That is a flair. I'm interested now.
All right, give us a sec.
But yeah, there was a blue banner in the template that said, "Don't use images in your resume." It's like, it's blue square. I suppose it's technically an image, but calm down.
That's illegal.
Yeah.
It's a giant pixel.
And I couldn't get rid of it for some reason too. It was like attached to the name title.
That's the
It's like, cool, great.
Sounds like some word food bullshit.
Yeah, you gotta get
I understand why everyone wants you to know how to use Office now. It's like, yeah, I don't know why that word's over there now. It's cool.
I think that's like the final boss when it comes to the Deacon resume. So,
Yes. Figuring out how to actually use Word.
All right, just jump in the tables. Yeah, because that payload's massive. Login equals test and password equals test, comma, or 8398 equals like characters upper hex blob.
so I think if you like Control C it and did the -T now, it would remember the type of injection that it's doing.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. Yeah, I've done that. It's literally just retrieving unless it's stopped. I did tables, but it's the same as -T for received.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, I didn't see
Received.
that.
Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah, it's just like a hash cat like that. Once it's run the thing and it has like a swile or somewhere.
Dude.
Fucking. Come on. All right, let's kind of see it and try again. Check T, like slowing off more fast. See ya. Yeah, I want to put in T because it was dumb at all, but it always just takes so long. It's fucking annoying. So if you dump the tables first, see what table. Oh, what are you doing this again? No. See what table it is. Then just dump that table. So you can just do tac T, that table name, and then tac that dump. Much easier. Otherwise, you'll end up with like all the schema bullshit, and it's fucking annoying. And if you do it in a CTF, it ends up taking ages too, like just printing out shit for 20 minutes.
I'm pretty sure I tried doing one of these like badly, and it ended up taking like 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can take a long time. So what were you saying?
Yeah, I think this is gonna take a while.
Yeah, because this is a delay, so it's a time-based blind. So it's gonna take a long time because it's using delays to enumerate data. But yeah, this is how you would do it. There, close enough. Figure out the rest.
You can make a cup of tea.
But yeah, no. Well, thank you for listening at least. I don't know if anyone has any questions or whatever. I didn't know what to do basic wise. I'm gonna close this because it doesn't need to keep doing this. Yeah, if anyone has any, I didn't know what to do basic wise because it sometimes can be hard to like accommodate for people who are like new or whatever, especially because we're fucking doing this screen to screen instead of face to face or whatever. But yeah, if anyone's interested in anything or has any ideas of stuff that they're interested in, send it to me or Jeremy or me or Zesh or like Sirius or whatever, because it's just like, because suggestions are always useful. Because I'm always like, oh, I'll go off on some tangent, and then in reality, it's like you guys, might want something else or some shit. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be good. That would be sweet.
Yeah. Yeah. Because suggestions are always helpful. Because I'll always end up going down the web tangent, because that's what I like doing. But if someone's like, oh, I want more of this or that, it's like, well, it might be useful for, yeah.
Yeah, the web is all I really know, because Chisholm's not the greatest institute to learn at. So
yeah,
it didn't teach us too much. But yeah, it's a refresher to figure out what web is all about. It's like, yes, I remember this now. I remember using SQL map, kind of.
Yeah. Well, that was the thing. Like, I always kind of thought, it's. I'm gonna stop my screen. It always seemed like wisdom is kind of the most popular, not most popular, but it's the biggest part of the industry. Like it's kind of like the bread and butter in a lot of ways. I mean, yes, obviously that's not true for every company and stuff, but for a majority of stuff, a lot of it is web apps. Things are all going to online. Everyone's doing using Microsoft Word in your browser and using all sorts. So everything's in browser these days. So for me, it just made sense. I was like, well, I think my future is going to end up being on a fucking web app. So it just sort of, it was a natural.
I don't want you to think about cryptology.
Yeah.
That one's going to be fun.
Well, that's the problem. I still haven't done that subject, and I'm shitty. I'm worried about it. I'm not that good at maths, That shit's. And then come across it in a CTF, and it's like, oh, this is fucked.
Yes. Get somebody else to
Yeah.
do it. Or write a program to do it for you.
Exactly.
Please don't ask me.
We need like a math nerd, you know, like someone who's
Yeah.
somebody who's like majors in computer science and is like our resident math nerd for that sort of shit. Because I just look at it and I'm like, that's too low level for me. Like it's too fucking cool.
Yeah, we had to learn assembly a little bit. It's like, I'm not gonna do this. This is not good.
Yeah.
Oh, that's actually
Yeah, exactly.
What
It is cool, yeah. What's that?
What unit was it in?
It was in the Chisholm studies. It was like the very basics, but even then, it was like, whoa. It's like how to create a variable in assembly. It's like, yeah, no. Just type equals X in Python or whatever, and you're done.
Yeah.
It's good, man. Good.
Now I need to boost you. There you go.
All right, fellas.